So welcome everybody to tonight's session on women in automation. Tonight we're going to be exploring RPA as part one. So we appreciate you guys coming tonight. And I just want to introduce the women who will be putting on this series. So we have Cynthia Libby, Priya Darshini, Tracy Dixon, and Bruna. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a minute. So about today's session, we will be recording this session, as I just mentioned, and it will be available on the community website tomorrow. So I'll put down the URL in the chat box where you can find that. If you please keep yourself on mute during the session so we can capture the information on the recording for others who might not be able to attend this live session. And if you'd please use the chat to place any questions you have, and we'll answer those as time permits. And then lastly, I just wanted to put the URL in here for the community.uipath.com website so that if you are interested in any additional upcoming events or programs, you can find them there. And I am going to highlight a few other things that are going on right now. So as I mentioned, today is part one of the series, and I will put the URL so you can register for part two if you're interested. We have three sessions that we're going to be running, and they'll be every Tuesday for 3 weeks. So we're excited. They kind of build on each other. And then the other thing I wanted you to know is that we're running a really nice tech series. So if you're into technology, these are great. These are actually put on by the experts of these areas. So we have one coming up this week on Tableau. We have another one coming the week of November 17th for SageMaker. And then we have a couple in December. So just want to make you aware of these. We are also running our program right now for anybody interested in becoming an MVP. And we do this once a year. So the applications are open now and they close on December 10th, if you're interested. And lastly, we're having our first academic program with a community that's going to take place from November 16th to 18th. So I will also put my email in the chat box. If you guys are interested in any of these programs and want to reach out to me, please do. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And just, why don't I start with Cynthia? Cynthia, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Cynthia Libby. I work for UiPath. I'm a consulting director. Basically, we help people with become successful with a product, help them overcome any roadblocks, and use a tool happily and adopt all the new things that they're always developing.
Great. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And Tracy?
Hello, I am Tracy Dixon. I work for Centric Consulting. I am the operational excellence lead for Miami and the UiPath partnership lead. So I help companies figure out their strategy, use the products, architect as needed, and generally love to talk to companies and people about meaningful work.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. Mm-hmm. And Priya?
Hello, everyone. I'm Priya Darshini Esteves. I'm an independent RPA solution architect in the Houston area. And I love talking about RPA and UiPath in general. So which is why I became a 3-time MVP along with Tracy. And it's been a wonderful journey learning about RPA and also talking about it. So excited to have you all on board in this automation journey.
Thanks, Priya. And Bruna.
Hello everyone. My name is Bruna Cavalcante Bruno. I'm a Brazilian guy, and I am RPA engineer at DOC here in Brazil. I work with UiPath for 3 years, and I will be with you next week, talking about challenges and career here.
Great, thank you, Bruna. So as you can see, we have quite a few women here who will be talking during these sessions, and each session is a little bit different. So tonight we're going to start out with Cynthia, if you want to pull up your slide deck. Great. And if you want to get going, that would be great.
Okay. All right. So I'm assuming you guys can see it. Go ahead and
Yes.
go to the next slide. Okay, good. All right. Just a little cover. This is the first part of 3. So hopefully we'll be seeing you guys all next 3 weeks. We're going to talk a little bit about what is RPA. So I know some of you guys might be already using RPA or UiPath, but this is supposed to be an intro to talk a little bit about what RPA is, the company that develops it, what you can do in the job market, what you can do for RPA, and how do you learn it. So a nice little overview of RPA and its abilities. So I already introduced myself briefly, but here's a little bit more about myself. I started working in software in 1980, and this is a little picture of the types of report paper we used to use, and it actually had carbon paper between the pages. So it tells you how far we've come in that time. We would print these up and run them through a couple of machines, and they would snag up, and it would be awful. And so we'd have to reprint them all over again. So I really hated all that repetitive tasks. And so I wanted to learn more about what I could do to automate things. So, but most of my life as in my career has been doing automation of different kinds. For a long time, I traveled as a consultant. Got to see a lot of cool places. I got to tell you some of the best places there were the small towns where you get to really hunt for fun things to see and do. Get some good meals there too. Prior to RPA, I was using automated testing. And so that's where I kind of learned a lot of the interacting with UI and APIs. Then I started using a couple different RPA tools. I liked UiPath the best, so I came to work for them about a year ago. And this is just something my company likes me to put in here. Basically, anything I tell you about the product, want to make sure you realize that this is just an overview and things may be changing sometime in the future. So I've mentioned RPA a couple times, and you actually signed up for this. So RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. And even though we love showing lots of little pictures of robots running around, these are all software robots, not hardware. They're not little physical robots, they're software. And what we do is we train those robots how to emulate what a person would do. So looking at a bunch of different systems, they're going to be able to interact and move data between them just like a person would. We usually try to use the user interface. So if you would use a mouse scroll or a mouse click, that's what we would do. And we would make sure that if we verify that the screens are right, and if they're not right, we throw an error. So I like to think of it like if you hired an intern and you give the intern real quick list of tasks to do, every time the intern hit something they didn't know what to do, they would ask you for help. That's kind of how I like to program my bot, so that they will do what they can really quickly, and anytime they have a problem, they just throw it out for someone else to figure out. And that's usually our best way to get a lot of work done very quickly. Okay. So I'm sure if you guys have been out in the industry for very long, you've been working for companies where there's so many different applications you can use. Some of them are the big ones like SAP, Oracle, NetSuite. All of these are really big companies, but there's also a bunch of little ones that you're probably working with. Plus someone has probably made this really amazing spreadsheet with some data that pulls from other reports and makes something different. All these different things are awesome, but trying to get the data between them can really be difficult. And so what has happened is we basically have asked a lot of people to sit at their desk and copy and paste data from one system to another, combining those data sources, making sure that they match up. So for example, if you were converting from one system to another system, you'd have to basically bring up both of those systems and look line by line to make sure that they were right. And you can see where this person's not very happy about that. So we're going to try to make it so that we can get some of those things that are not so much fun to do, and they're really not increasing the bottom line. They're just basically just getting some work done. We want to make sure we get those assigned to a robot. So RPA, what we do is we put a layer on top of all those groups of applications and read the screen. We can decide what to do because we actually tell the bot what to do in certain circumstances, and then it can actually interact with all the systems and data. So some of the tasks that we normally would put in for robots is they log into applications, they can move files and folders, read and write to databases. A lot of the things people do a lot of times is opening emails. So some people have a shared email box and a bunch of emails will come in with attachments. We would the bot might take all those attachments, pull them all down, put them in a folder for someone to look at. Maybe the bot's going to go a little bit further, open those files up and actually act upon them, take the data and actually input to another system. So all sorts of things can be done. Some of them are exactly the same way you would do it, and some way we're actually going to connect to system APIs. And that's just a little programming language that a lot of systems like to do to make sure so that you can interact with the data without having to actually navigate through screens. For those of us I really like using APIs because they're very fast and they don't change much, unlike the user interface, which can sometimes change quite a bit. And please interrupt me anytime if you have any questions at all. I'm going to show you very quickly an automation, just a sample of how an automation might work. This is a professional demo, so it actually has it's been formatted nicely. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually have a bot that does these 7 different applications. We're going to do Excel and Word and PDF and SAP, Salesforce, Terminal, and work through it. So right here, I'll pause for a second. This is our input data. Our input data has the code for each person. They have a code, a name, their email, and what their SAP number is. Then they're going to actually pull some more data out of here. So this is our input data, and we're going to update this spreadsheet as we go. You may recognize some of the things you do as well. All right. So that's our spreadsheet. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up all the applications. So you're going to see in a second where we're going to open up the terminal. We're going to open up Salesforce. We're going to open up SAP and see how SAP is working as well. Then we're going to take our SAP data, put it into a Word template, convert that to PDF, and we're going to actually put it to send it to our person. Then we're going to loop over again to the next person over and over again. Okay. So here's our data again, just so you can remember. So we have these people's names. Here's our terminal. So if you were around for quite a while, you probably have seen these kind of terminals before, and lots of people still use them. On the right, we have our Salesforce. On the bottom, we have our SAP logon screen and personnel file. I'm going to pause this for a second. So what we've done here is we've actually going to go into we went to the mainframe and got the person's information. We're going to go to Salesforce and get their information. And then we're going to look it up in SAP. So in this case, the person actually had a Salesforce expense account and so was able to actually create it, and everything worked out just fine. And then our second, I believe it's our second loop through. We're not going to be able to find the person, and so it's going to actually create the account for them. So here we are creating the contact that it needs and saving it. So this is where we talked about how the bot can make some decisions for you. So if it doesn't find an account and it's okay for it to do something like create an account, it'll do it for you automatically. All right. And then this is towards the end here. So what we've done is we've actually gone through and found the jobs that were on hold, a little bit about their Salesforce account. You can see that second one actually says that it was created, get the balance sheet information, etc. Now, one of the reasons I like showing this particular one, and I'm sorry, this is where it's showing you the email that was sent. So this is the robot information. We can put in a title. You can see where it has an attachment of that PDF file and an actual message itself. You can customize this to be anything you want. And it's coming actually from a robot account. So you can actually have it set up to go from specific robots. So you don't have to worry about compliance. It would actually be able to track exactly who had done this work. And the reason I like showing you this one is because it shows you a lot of details of different things you can bounce back and forth. And I could tell you, I have a tendency to get distracted if it takes a while for something to process in one of the machines, and it takes me longer to do things sometimes because I start doing something else and I realize, oh, it finished, and I have to go back and look at it again. This way, the bot is patient and it waits for it to finish, and then it kicks right off to the next task it's supposed to be doing. All right, and that's that part. Any questions so far? Okay, how did to place? Oh, okay. Oh, well, I think that the putting the and making it into a square like that, I think that's really more for demo purposes. But you could do that if you wanted to by telling it where to open up the window. Yeah. So normally what we do is we do it full screen, but for the demo purposes, it looks nicer to have it separated. That's a good question. Okay. All righty. Okay, and let me, one moment. Okay, so these are some of the things we've done, and we're going to go on to the next thing. All right, so again, we're talking about how we sit on top of these different applications and they emulate what a person would do in the different layers. So you might think about, I just showed you a fairly complex automation in the fact that I had a bunch of different applications, but sometimes you have ones that are very complex in one application or maybe two applications, and you want to figure out, you have all these ideas of possible things that you could automate, and you need to be able to figure out what things you should tackle first. So one thing first we want to do is we want to find some things. First, our business unit might look for the following criteria. Is it very manual, meaning someone has to type a bunch of information in? Is it very repetitive? Is it rules-based? So again, thinking back to our intern, would we be able to explain how to do most of the things and where the limits and rules are? For example, we want to make sure that if we are doing a hiring application that we have some rules in there that says don't hire someone with a salary over, I don't know, $100 million an hour, or whatever you decide to make it. You can make it so your bot can have these guidelines so that you're not going to accidentally pay someone way too much money. We also want high volume or frequency. That's one of our best things to do. So if you had 3,000 records to do every single day, you'd have to have a bunch of people tied up doing that. This would make it so you could actually do something very quick, but that's not always, all of these things aren't always the reason we would automate that. Sometimes we have automation benefits that are different. So for one, some of my customers like doing the improved customer experience. So for example, if I didn't have that many of these happening, but what would happen is maybe overnight, someone would submit something and they would have to wait for the next day when someone came in the office to do the work. Whereas if a bot was online, the bot would actually be able to handle that immediately overnight. So that would be an improved customer experience. It would be more important to them than the volume. So we're looking for some of these things as well as the volume. We're going to also look for some cost savings. So is it going to be, sometimes if we get things done quicker, we can, like if we're doing processing of payments, we want to make sure that we're getting paid when we should, and we're paying people before they start charging us extra. These are all sorts of things we can think about. Then we're going to prioritize those. So I've seen clients that change between what they think is the most important as they go through their life cycle. So some years they're very concerned about customer satisfaction. That's their highest priority, and then they knock those out. Now the next year they go, okay, this year our our priority is going to be cost savings. So they go through that same list of processes and figure out which ones are give them the best, most cost savings. So you, as time goes through, you might change your priority as well. Now, who is UiPath? That's the company that I work for. We're here. It's been working amazing. It's an amazing company to work for because every year they improve the products. They add new products, and they're actually up here in the Magic Quadrant. This is from 2020, so it's I'm sure we're much farther up than this at this point. Basically because not only do we have some great ideas, but we actually execute them. So if we tell you we're going to do something, you can expect that it's going to come out when we have advertised, usually, and it's going to be pretty good. So I don't want not kind of places where people promise you things and you never ever see the software. Okay. So these talking a little bit about the types of robots you can have. Okay. So no robots, that's what everyone has today. That's just your normal human beings. We can also work in tandem. So we can have a little bot that sits on your computer and you interact with it as you go. So that's an attended robot that listens to you and works on things. So like, for example, you might say, hey, could you go out and find all the information I need about this customer so I can actually process some paperwork for them, but I need to get everything we have from all these different systems and bring it up on my screen. That's what one thing an attended robot could do. A hybrid one is one where we maybe have where the bot is going to not just go out to all the other systems like the attended one would, but it's going to actually go off and ask other robots to help them. So the bot's going to go out and say, hey, the finance robot, could you go pull all the finance information? And hey, the Salesforce robot, could you go out and get the Salesforce information? And all those bots will go out and find the information they need and bring it back to the attended bot. And then that person would actually, that bot would actually give you what you need. Right. And then the fully unattended, these are kind of what we kind of started with, kind of our nice bread and butter, where they run 100% in the background. So a human being doesn't have to ever look at these, other than just verifying that they're running smoothly. And this is where we're just doing a lot of records, usually over and over and over again. And the processes are simple enough that we can actually decide what's going to happen next. We don't have to ask a human for help most of the time. Okay. All right. I'm just checking to make sure that we're okay. Chat's still good. Okay. Okay. And oops, going on to this one. All right. So we have two different basic types of developers. We have RPA developers and citizen developers. So a citizen developer is kind of like the person that would write a bunch of macros in Excel for themselves, and maybe they would share them with their coworkers, but they're not writing it to be enterprise-wide, to be used by a lot of people, just a few people. And so they're creating these automations by themselves, and they're using normally a tool called Studio X, which is very simplified, easy way to automate things. That tool has gotten amazingly easier and better every year. I'm very impressed with it. And if you're a self user, you're just making that for yourself, but a power user may be doing that to help their whole team. Our RPA developers, those are the people that are actually coming in and developing things that the whole automation, the whole team would work, the whole company might use. They're usually working for the Center of Excellence, and they could actually build automations that have been submitted, ideas have been submitted through that pipeline approach to say what kind of automations people need, and they would build them for them. So if your team doesn't have any self-users or power users, they would use the RPA developer team to do what they need. Then you the people that actually use those machines, those bots that were developed, are automation users. Okay. All right. All right. So we can actually, the RPA developers can use this tool called Studio, and it's going to actually make it so that you can actually do a lot of interesting and complex things. You could even do robots that have artificial intelligence skills. They can evaluate documents. Lots of very interesting things they can do. This is the citizen developer look, and it's usually very simplified. So example, I might want to use an Outlook account and go through all of my email messages and do something special if I find something in there I want to use. So that's kind of our two tools, Studio and Studio X. Those are our development tools. Orchestrator is the tool that it kind of sits, we actually communicate all of our tools as they're working. And as our bots are working, it can write to Orchestrator about log messages. It can log to Orchestrator and tell us about how many transactions it has left to do. It's a very interesting way to be able to see everything that's going on in the automation world. And I'm briefly talking about this. There's a lot to it. Right. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the RPA job market, kind of where we're looking for it. First off, it's helping to, because of COVID-19, and we're seeing a lot of people doing remote work, which is a lot different than it had been. And I think we're going to, hopefully we're going to still be doing a lot of the remote work. And we want to make sure things are digitalized. So we don't have to have people physically looking at pieces of paper to be able to do their job. It's going to be actually pulled in digitally or pulled in, and we actually work that way. And then we're going to actually automate as much of that as possible. So the growing job demand is going to be in some things like process automation specialists, and that's not just developers. So if you're a kind of person that understands how processes work in your company, so if you've actually helped design the order to cash process where all those widgets move back and forth and how it's supposed to work, that's a process. Those people are really invaluable in automation as well. So it's not, you don't just have to be a developer. In fact, I think a lot of the ladies on the call right now are not developers 100% of the time. What we're seeing less and less of is some like, for example, rudimentary auditing, because the bot can actually do some of that auditing for you. Anyway, so we're hoping that we're going to get more and more RPA opportunities for you. We're working from the UiPath perspective to make sure that people are trained, understand the possibilities of this, and grow RPA. And one of the things is because we're trying to automate all of these processes, we're actually getting people, we need people to have a lot of analytical thinking and innovation, problem solving, because we're trying to take all of that rudimentary work that's not very fun or very interesting and kind of up to it. Oh, you're circling my thing. Okay. The process automation specialist, all these emerging things are going to be important. And I'm looking to see. Okay. All right. And the next page. All right. So we're going to looking for, when we talk about RPA jobs, we have the developers, we have people that use it, business analysts, that's people that kind of analyze the processes that exist today and how it could be automated. Solution architects that see all the different ways you could actually put together an automation. So they might say, well, it looks like what we want to do is we want to have some kind of a tool to scan in the data that you're getting now, scan those files in and handle those properly, or use different tools. There's a bunch of different tools we interact with. So finding out where we have APIs that would help or connectors, that's important. Our infrastructure engineers, they work on making sure that we have machines that can run. So all these bots have to have a little machine they're running on, and that's usually a virtual machine. That could be a virtual machine or a real machine that's at your company, or it could be up in the cloud somewhere. We need lots of RPA educators and project managers, and then of course consultants. Consultants are awesome. So how can we make RPA work for us? Okay. Okay. Just looking to see. Okay. So for example, some of the reasons I like to automate anything I can because I don't like doing things manually. So I'm giving you some personal uses, and this is to kind of give you some ideas of if you just wanted to play with RPA and do it for yourself, some things you could do. So my aunt ran a bookstore, and she used to write book reviews for her local newspaper. So I wrote an automation that would go through all the newspaper's archive sites, find her name, download those reference pages as JPEGs, and then I could actually read through them. And I could make a book. Well, I plan to make a book for my family so they can actually see that. Also, you can do email organizers that can actually pull all your email and put it in the right places, kind of make sure that if there's any rules that you need to go to specific folders, all sorts of stuff that you can do. You could do like with Outlook, but what I find for my personal computer is I'm always changing my email application. So my rules don't always follow along with me like I should. So a bot would do really well for that. And then our manager wants us to track our time that we're spending with our customers. And so one of our people in our group wrote an automation that actually takes all the calendar meetings that we've been doing and said, oh, well, it looks like you've spent 6 hours in meetings and you had these different emails with the users. It's probably this much time you spent on your client. And then you can manually review those and then update them. Okay. Okay, so how can I learn RPA? First off, we have freely available software. The Community Edition allows you to download Studio. Studio is for Windows only, but there's ways to actually run automations other places. But just to start with, we're going to say short answer: Studio is for Windows only. Okay. Okay. Hold on a second. I'm trying to. Sorry, folks. I don't have an eraser icon to be able to erase this right now, so I don't know how that happened, but it's still there. All right. So anyway, so this is our free learning platform. You can do all the different classes when you're first in the discover phase. This is how you learn about all the tools you can do to create all the data you need to be able to understand how your process works today. Then you can start building your applications, build your automations, and we talk about the Studio X and Studio we talked about before. We also have document understanding, which is what takes in forms and all different types of forms that you might want to process. And then for the manage, we can actually come through to our automation cloud, which is where we our platform in the cloud that actually runs a bunch of our different applications, such as AI Center and Test Suite and Data Service. So if you've been doing automated testing with another tool, you should take a look at this because this is kind of an interesting concept, and I would be interested to hear what you guys think about this. Then you're going to run your robots, and you can actually work on other ways you could do things. We can actually build little apps that would run on the web. So if you're used to having to build an app like a dashboard for people and it's kind of complicated and cumbersome, the apps is kind of a nice way to be able to build an app that your whole company can use pretty easily. So one of our clients just built an app that actually will allow people to register, to sign up to become a Studio X citizen developer. So things that you can think about that would be very helpful to have automated all the way through. So all of this training is going to be free. And we actually have role-based training based on business analysts and project managers. If you want to be a developer or a citizen developer, if you want to be a solution architect, this all kind of comes through. And this thing here shows you if they're recommended or not, right? Okay. And then we also have courses for COE leaders and champions. So if you're running the business, you can understand how to actually effectively direct your automated team and develop according to what you need the enterprise to get benefit from your program. And then our infrastructure engineers. Okay. And then there's other training videos. What I love about the fact that UiPath is so open, a lot of people are using it. So you can, if you search for UiPath and anything you're looking for, you can actually see it. You can go to YouTube. I like this guy, Anders Jensen, quite a bit. LinkedIn Learning has some courses. Udemy does as well. YouTube has got just a ton of different things you can look at. Okay. And if you decide that you love this so much, you can actually come in here and get certified. And then that kind of makes it so that it looks like you know what you're, you can actually, it makes you look like a little bit more like you know what you're doing with when you actually go out there and try to find a job, because you actually say, I've actually taken the test, I know what I'm doing, and it's a nice thing to have on your in your tool belt. And this just talks a little bit about what the training is like. We have an associate level, which is kind of your intro level. But if you're pretty good and you just want to jump to it, you can go right to the advanced training and get your advanced or senior RPA developer. Now, I will say that they may be changing these things. I never know how long these will be available, but they do have these. This is what the certifications are now. They do cost money to take the test, so you do want to be ready for them. And Academic Alliance, this is something that Diana mentioned earlier, talking about the different universities that are actually working with UiPath and their students. And so that's kind of an interesting concept too, that you can actually, in college, you can actually be doing this using RPA. Okay. Now, do we have any questions before I go on to something else?
I don't see any, but I just wanted to mention that last week we actually did a botathon at WCU in Pennsylvania. So if people are interested in that type of activity too, just reach out and let us know.
Awesome. Okay, so I had showed you earlier a little bit about this. And on the call, if anyone wants to talk about what they're doing now, I do not know how to get rid of this little guy. So hold on, let me try one more time. Now that I have, there we go. Now that I have the PowerPoint presentation off, it's doing much better. Thank you. Okay, that was annoying me. All right, so this is what Studio looks like. I have an example here where I was trying to take, and I'll show you my folder. I was trying to take in here, I have a folder full of TIFF files, right? These are just sample data, so don't worry, there's nothing specific here. So these are my sample TIFF files. And I wanted to combine them together. I'm trying to do it with, take all those files and put them to a PDF file. So those would be like sample invoices that I might have pulled out of my email, or I might have scraped them out of another PDF file, or lots of different ways I may have done it. Then I also have where I take those TIFF files, the multiple TIFF files, and I put them back into a single TIFF file. Okay, so I'm going to show you two different ways. So if this is our standard UiPath Studio interface, we've got, this is where our basic process is. As we click on things, there are properties on the right-hand side where we can put some more information in here. On the left-hand side, we have our project files we're working on. Or if I want to build on my application, I can actually go to the activities and I can drag in something from the side and I can actually put it. So if you guys ever did programming at all, you would know you always start with something like hello world. Oh, if you can type. That's how you would do a hello world in UiPath. Right. So this is going to actually invoke, it'll write that line out, and then it'll actually invoke two different sub-processes. So I'm going to show you what those sub-processes look like. So here we're doing some assignment statements. And this is where we're actually going to do the heart of the matter, where we take all of those images and are going to convert them to PDF, to one PDF, and we'll end up with a combined PDF. So you can see where it's, like for example, if I'm clicking on this here, you can see where I'm giving it an input folder and an output folder, and the file it's going to go to. The file it creates, this is going to be going into a variable. All right, so this one's a little bit more straightforward because I just have some objects I could drag in, and this images to PDF converter is just something I could drag in. We can also come here. This one's a little bit more complicated. I just wanted to show you kind of like two ends of the spectrum. Over here, we have a workflow, and what we're going to do here is we're actually going to do a little bit of invoke some VB code. And so we can actually come in, I can do it. You can actually put some VB code in here and it'll do the work for you. And you pass in the arguments and then it'll keep moving. So this is VB but you can also do C if you want, if you like that better. You can also do lots of different ways. So we can get very complicated. We can do some APIs. I got to tell you, as time has gone by, we've made this simpler and simpler. UiPath has made this simpler and simpler. And then here we're just going to go, this is a little loop, a for each loop to go through all the files I'm looking at. And here is an if statement, which is pretty straightforward. If I wanted an else, I can add an else on this right-hand side over here. So I'm not expecting you guys, I'm not trying to teach you how to do this development right now. I just kind of show you it's not impossible. It can go very simply or it can be a bit more difficult. And this is our Studio X, which is more of our professional developers thing. And let me go over here and I'm just going to run this. Unfortunately, this one has no video. It doesn't actually do any things that you can see. But then when it comes back, you can see in the outlet where it has the hello world and it tells me where it put the first PDF file, it put the merged PDF file and where it put my merged TIFF file. And if I look at that, it's going to be in my output directory. It'll go anywhere I tell it to, really. This is my merged TIFF file, which is here. It's got 4 different pages in it. And this is my merged PDF file, which, as you can see, I've been running it a couple times today. So this is the most recent one. And it does the same thing, only in PDF. Right. So it just kind of gives you a flavor for what's available. All right. And that's it for me. Do you guys have any questions or comments or something you want to talk about on our next chat?
Yeah, Tracy and Priya, if you're there,
Yes.
Is there any input you want to give, or?
So just to draw the distinction, Studio is the tooling that professional developers will use, and then Studio X is really for everybody. So it tends to be what more of the business side uses, or citizen developers, just to clarify.
Yep. And I can switch back over to, I'll switch over to Studio X. You guys can see what that looks like.
Now you always have the ability to create something in Studio X and convert it to Studio, but you can't do vice versa. So once you create something on the Studio side or have moved it to Studio, it will remain just in Studio. It will work just there.
Kind of like if you're a student athlete and you go pro. Once you've gone pro, kind of hard to go backwards. Okay, so this is Studio X, just to give you an idea what that looks like. And we run boot camps quite a bit for people looking to automate different things. And I am amazed at how much people can figure out very quickly with this tool. So don't feel like you have to be a developer to get this to work. So you can see where this one looks a little bit different than the other one, but it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of nice because it guides you through a little bit more. So my for each loop here looks a little bit easier to understand. It actually has the name of my spreadsheet, which sheet my workbook I'm working with, and which sheet I want to be on. And you can see the pictures show you if I'm clicking on things or if I want to type in some text. Is there anything you guys want to see?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if you guys have any questions or are interested in anything about RPA that you just want to learn about. Okay.
For anyone that might have questions outside of this, I'm going to paste the path for the forum and for Slack. I know I use them all the time and still do now. Whenever I run into something that I don't figure out right away, where there are a lot of us out there that are willing to answer questions or to post questions for others to help us with. So everyone's welcome to use that pretty regularly because I think all of us have for sure.
Yeah. And I'll go back and I'll show you. I have just a few more slides then. I kind of always like to start to have the Q&A before we do that because we will send out the slides later. Okay, so these are my old computers I used to work with. I want to make sure that when you guys start working on this, I got to tell you, hours go by when I'm doing development like this, and I love it. So be careful about your work-life balance. Don't go too far off on that. And I wanted to show you, these are the links. So when Diane sends out the presentation, it will have all these links to different places, including my LinkedIn profile, so you can actually connect with me. And then that's it. Thank you very much for being here. I flipped my view again, so thanks, guys. That's all we got.
Thanks, Cynthia. Great presentation. So tonight we wanted to give you a really high overview of, a little bit about what RPA is and talk a little bit about how you can get trained. Next week's session, Tracy will be leading. It'll get a little bit more into the careers. And, we are really interested in hearing, anything you guys have questions about RPA. We're really here to help you. That's why we set up these sessions and talk freely. You're going to find out a little bit more about how these women got into their careers next week and, why they chose RPA, what the opportunities are, all that type of thing. So we hope you join us. And if you look in the chat, I've put in the information on how you can register for next week's session. And then tomorrow, the presentation will be ready for you to download for this session. And, please feel free just to, chat and feel at home here because, again, we're all just here to help people with any questions they have on RPA, how to get started, what RPA is, anything you have questions on, we're happy to help you and point you to resources and that type of thing. So with that, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. Again, Cynthia, thanks for taking the lead on the presentation, and we'll wrap it up then. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.